go. But yeah, we'll have a catch up.
problem.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a keen interest in that. Oh gosh, where am I going here? There we go. It's going to be weird. You're going to be able to see yourself in the background now. Right, let's go live. Fabulous. Good evening and welcome to this CPD Meet webinar. What day is it? Well, I don't know what day it is today. It's Tuesday.
15th?
We don't have webinars on a Tuesday, do we? This is bizarre. Anyway, good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar. Ben is going to be presenting shortly on pre-hospital ECGs, the Unhappy Qrs. I tried to find a QRS complex that looked unhappy, but I just couldn't find one, so we've gone for the generic and we'll go with that. So my name is Andrew. I'll be facilitating tonight, shortly handing you over to Ben, who will be doing all things ECG, but we can't see or hear you, just in case you are sat there in your terry toweling robe, or you've just come out from the hot tub maybe, refreshingly cooling yourself down for a session on ECGs, but we can't see you, and equally we can't hear you. So if you have any questions, please do pop them into the question and answer box and we'll pause them to Ben at the end. But equally, we have a chat box and I can already see 10 people are chatting away in there. So fabulously, if we can see maybe where you're dialing in from tonight, maybe what you do for a living, more importantly, what fascinates you around ECGs. If you are a member of CPD.me, then you will get a CPD certificate included for coming to tonight, and that will be there at 10 o'clock in the morning. Even better if you have our app, because it will notify you. And also, you'll get a copy of the recording sent to you too. But as always, we are live on YouTube, so you can always jump over there to catch up. And of course, if you are a member of CPD.me, your CPD certificate is automatically added to your CPD portfolio, which means you can just go in and reflect around what you know around unhappy QRS complexes. There will be some opportunity to scan QR codes tonight, so if you have got a QR code scanner pointed at the screen where appropriate, and you can take part with what's I think is called a call to action, which is a very technical term for clicking a button or doing something. If you're on social media, we always love to see what you're up to tonight, so whether you're sat there with your dog on your lap or your snake around your neck, then please do capture us at CPD.me if you're on Twitter. Also great if you follow us. I was going to hopefully get the Instagram, because we're also on Instagram, because we're keeping up with the kids, the young ones. So, and if you do post something, please do hashtag us at CPD Made Simple. If you're not a member of CPD.me, why not? Because we promise we will make recording your continuing professional development super simple. In fact, quite an exciting thing today. I can't really release it out the bag, but 2 UK ambulance service trusts have just bought CPD.me for every single member of their staff to put on their new tablet devices. So a fabulous opportunity out there for those guys and girls who are about to get that rolled out to them. But if you haven't become a member already, you can try 30 days for $1.99, cheap as chips. Can't even get a cup of coffee for that. And we promise to make recording CPD simple using our amazing app and our dashboard. And more importantly, you get 80 superstars like Ben every year producing fabulous webinars just like this with automatic certificates and evidence that drops directly into your portfolio. If honestly, if I was a salesman, I could give you a better pitch, but the reality is it makes reducing time and managing your CPD super simple. Scan that QR code or please consider joining as a member. In fact, if you join us tonight as a member, you'll even get your certificate free included for coming to tonight's CPD webinar. As I said, we're on YouTube, and when we go live on YouTube, if you subscribe, you will get notified. And also, we've got some amazing recordings of previous webinars available on YouTube. So please do jump over there. If you ever lose transmission or the room is full, which occasionally is, if we get more than 1,000, 2,000 people, you can always catch up live streamed on YouTube. So we are going to give away tonight 3 £25 Amazon vouchers to people who leave us genuine reviews. I had a meeting today with Trustpilot. What a valuable bunch they are. But if you leave us a if you leave us a review, a genuine review, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 stars or 5 stars on Trustpilot, the App Store or Google, I'll reveal 2 winners at the end of tonight's webinar, and I'll do a live reveal tomorrow on Twitter. And if you look on our Twitter page, you'll see that we do a little reveal the following day. So if anybody leaves us a review after tonight's broadcast with Ben, I promise we'll catch up with that tomorrow. So I'll also pop some links into the chat once Ben has got underway. If you're a CPD champion, please do subscribe to our posters. Our CPD webinars are free to attend, and we always want you to promote them in your workplace if you're a CPD champion, because there's some valuable learning there to be had along our events. So we tend to try and do at least 5 to 6 live broadcasts for a month, and so please do subscribe to our poster. It means we don't bombard you with spam. You'll get literally a copy of our fresh and shiny poster once a month delivered to your email that you can then share electronically, because we're very paper conscious here at CPD Me. All that leads me to say is, Ben, are you ready to roll?
I am, yes, I'm good to go.
Fabulous. Well, you've got all the permissions you need, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to let you roll over.
Oh, this will stop other screen sharing. Do you want to continue? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a... Stop. That one. Share. Yes. Can you see that? Oh, it's alluded to what's coming later on. Can you see that okay?
Perfectly. You just need to put it into presenter mode.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that. So I have noticed a couple of people I know, like Mark Northcott's on there, who I went to school with. Hi, Mark. Also Charlotte, who I think I know from Kent. Jeremy, you should understand this, even though I understand your HCA. And Kirsty, I think you work for CCAM as well. You can always email me if you don't have any questions or you want me to do more stuff. But anyway, we've got a lot to cover in this hour. So this is obviously the third part, and we're going to look at pre-hospital ECGs, the Unhappy Qrs, by means of a plan. As I say, this is part of a series. The first one we talked about the principles. My mum loved it, so she gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The second one, we talked about AV blocks, left and right bundle branch block. We also looked at bi and trifascicular block. We also looked at Wolff Parkinson White. My mum didn't quite enjoy it as much. She gave it 4.9 stars, but I'm quite happy with 4.9. Today, we're going to be looking at the Unhappy Qrs. Okay. The next one, we're going to be looking at T-wave. I've named it T-wave goodbye. T-wave changes. Why do T-wave changes? Why is it relevant to us? What should we be looking for? When's it normal? When's it not normal? What do we need to do about it? The fifth one's kind of been left a little bit open. So if there is any bits that I don't cover or you have any particular questions, but the ones that keep coming up or the ones that I've been emailed about or received messages, we're going to look at AF, SVT, so the difference between AF, SVT, which I get asked quite a lot, atrial flutter. We're going to look at rates. Why do rates change it? Why, when it goes too fast, we see abnormal changes. When it goes too slow, we see different changes. Someone's also asked about pacemakers. What should we be doing with pacemakers? Should we be assessing them? Should we be doing ECGs? What's it mean? Blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. And then the last one, which we haven't got a date for yet, the tips and tricks. If you come to this tips and tricks, I guarantee you, as long as you follow this approach, you will never miss an unwell ECG. So language, we've just had a lovely conversation about this. I will, throughout this presentation, use medical terminology. And a prime example being is if I say something like myocardial infarction. Now, I don't know where any of you are in your journey of education. You could be an anaesthetist, you could be a cardiologist, you could be a healthcare assistant, you could just be someone watching this because you find it interesting. I want to make sure that every single one of you understands what I'm saying. So I may say the term myocardial infarction, and I will follow it up with a more layman's terms of heart attack. Now, I'm aware that some medical terms and the term that I use afterwards, there could be small differences, but it's just so you understand what I'm talking about. If there is a term that I use, say, for example, ischemia, where there is no kind of layman's terms, I will follow up with a brief explanation. So this shows ischemia, which means it's being starved of glucose and oxygen. So it means everyone can understand, because everyone should understand that. Specificity and sensitivity. If you want to know full about this, go back to the principles and I'll explain it for about 5 minutes. Why is this relevant? Because I'm aware that during this presentation, there's a couple of bits that are not factually 100% correct. And the reason for that is a very simple reason for that. Is that we need to work safely. We need to make sure that we never miss an unwell ECG. Because you've got to remember, we are not cardiologists. Okay, we are not cardiologists. We are pre-hospital. I'm sure there may be amongst some of you, but I'm not a cardiologist. So I want to make sure that I can do the best for my patient with the knowledge I've got. So let's get cracking. The unhappy QRS. I've put this up, drawings. Oh, I want this one. I'm not an artist. I'm a paramedic, but just so we kind of allude to it. This one here, as you can see, picture of a heart. The green represents electricity and the red represents blood vessels. Okay. This one here represents the ventricles. As you can see, I've labeled them right ventricles, left ventricles. And this one here at the bottom, this is the muscle. This is the cardiac muscle. And as you see, the green, which is the nerve pathway, and the blood, which is, the red, which is the blood. This is on the inside. This is on the outside, or the inside, or it's just kind of round the tissue edge. And this is on the outside. So if I draw one of these pictures, I don't have to explain it again. Okay, so it just means full heart, ventricles, tissue. Perfect. Good. Oh, click back. Yep, this one. So the QRS, what are we going to be looking at today's session? We're going to look at the Q wave. We're not going to spend a huge amount on the Q wave because I think, you know, there's lots of nuances regarding the Q wave, but I think pre-hospitally, we just need to look at the finer points or the points that are relevant to us. We're going to look at the RS. We're going to look at the height of the RS. Why does it get bigger? What happens if it's not there? We're going to look at the width of the QRS as well. We're going to look at the right bundle branch block and left bundle branch block. Now, the right bundle I've put quite small. I'll explain why a little bit later on, but we're definitely going to look at left bundle. We're going to look at it in a little bit more detail, and we can discuss old and new and things like that. Then we're going to look at ST segment elevation and depression, okay? And why do we see the ECG that we do, and why is it relevant? So the Q wave. So when we see Q waves, we have a little bit of a want list. We want smaller than 2 small squares. In fact, let's quickly go back. So just to kind of allude to it, this is the Q wave here. So we've got our P wave and we've got our Q wave, which is this first strike down, which is not visible in every view. So when we see a Q wave, what do we want it to be? We want it to be smaller than 2 small squares, and we want it to be narrower than 1 square. And this is kind of what I mean. So if we were to look at, let's put laser pointer on. If we were to look at this one, as you can see, we've got this tiny little Q wave here, tiny little Q wave here. And that's kind of what we're after, just this tiny little one here. And we should ideally only be seeing it in lead 1, AVL, V5, and V6, okay? But why that location and why that shape? Well, let's have a little look. Let's have a little look. Yep, I want black. I don't want that one. Perfect. So this is obviously a picture just of the ventricles, and this represents the muscle tissue. And this is the right bundle branch. And that is the left bundle branch. So what the Q wave represents is electricity in this point just here. Okay. But why do we get that shape and why that location? So once again, if we go back to the principles of ECGs, which I did a few months ago, if electricity moves towards ECG dot, it goes up. If electricity moves away from the ECG dot, it goes down. Very simple. So if we were to think, we know that we want to see it in lead 1, which is over here, and AVL, and lead 5, V5 and V6. And they all have kind of quite a similar view, which is just kind of here, looking at the top of the septal line. And if we go back to the picture, we know that this is the top of the septal line, and we've got our 6, which is kind of here, our 5, which is kind of here, our AVL, and our 1, which is kind of here, all look in the same direction. So as it's going down, because we know it's positive electricity, it's got to be moving this way. but it's ever so slight, ever so slight. So we obviously have our P wave, and there it is. There's our Q wave. And this is the reason why we see it in those views, because obviously if it's a 1 or a 2, which is almost kind of here, electricity is moving across it and we wouldn't see it. We wouldn't see it. Oh, there we go. So let's talk about bad Q waves. Let's talk about why do we get bad Q waves. So once again, I'm just going to draw the ventricles. Why do we get bad Q waves? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw these lines going around the other side are just going to represent ECG dots. Doesn't really make any difference which one it is. Doesn't really make any difference. And let's say hypothetically, this part here, in fact, let's do it a bit bigger, is dead. It is not moving. No electricity can pass through it at all. Well, this ECG dot is looking in this direction. So it still wants to see something. Well, it can't see anything. Let's change that to red to make it clearer. It can't see anything here. So it looks across. So when we see a normal one, we normally see something like that, don't we? But when we see something like, and then we normally see something a bit more like that, it means we are seeing what is over here, meaning this part is dead. In fact, with this one, we normally see elevation with it as well. Normally means this part here is dead, completely dead. And that's not good. So as this picture kind of alludes to, we've got this electrode, we've got this dead bit of tissue, and on the first part of the electricity, the depolarization phase, it wants to move out, but it can't. So it's looking across, so it's moving away. And that's why we see these big Q waves. And for me, when it comes to Q waves, I kind of keep it simple. I just try and keep it simple. Small is okay in the normal views. I understand where we should be seeing the Q waves, so that's fine. That's fine. Small is okay. Lots of Q waves can be bad. If you see small Q waves in other views, is it lead placement? Is it the fact that their heart is not actually sat where we think it's sat? It can be okay. It can be bad. It can be okay. Growing Q waves are bad. Okay. Big, large are very, very bad. And it goes back to this element here. It shows us, if they're getting bigger, it shows that this part of the tissue is dying off. If it's growing, it's dying off. We can see that. There we go. It's in front of our eyes. The ECG is telling us. So the RSs, let's have a little look at some RSs. So what does the R wave mean? The R wave is the first upward deflection after the P wave. The R wave represents the ventricular depolarization. Well, let's have a little look. Let's have a little look. So the first part of the depolarization always wants to be out. So if our ECG dots are here, what are we going to see? We are going to see positive moving towards a positive electrode. It's going to go up. It's as simple as that. It just means we've got perfect electricity moving towards it. R wave height or amplitude, biggest in either V3, V4, V5, depending on what textbooks. I've kind of, when I did a bit of research to make sure everything I was doing was accurate, some categorically said it can only be V4, V5. Some said it can be V3 to V6, but as long as we kind of see some kind of growths. But it should get bigger in the above views. But why? Well, let me draw this again. So if I was to ask any of you, what part of the heart is the most powerful? What part of the heart has to pump the blood the furthest? I'd like to think you're all going to give me the same answer. So this is our right ventricle, this is our left ventricle. Our left ventricle is bigger is physically bigger. And because it's physically bigger, electricity has to move a bigger distance across the cardiac muscle. Over here, it's relatively small, relatively small, relatively small. I can't draw this slight out of proportion because actually the biggest section is normally this section across here. So if we were now to put our ECG dots on, our chest leads on, so we normally have 1 about here, 2 about here, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just by the simple fact of this, 4 and 5, depending on where they are, say if ECG dot just happens to sit here, 4 is definitely going to be the biggest. If the ECG dot happens to sit here, then maybe 5 could be the biggest. Or in fact, if the ECG dot 3 is sat here, maybe 3 could be the biggest. And this just gives us an idea that we're looking at the biggest part of the heart. We don't necessarily need to make sure, is this one in the correct place? But we just need to see progression. So this little picture just alludes to it, doesn't it? So if we actually think about it, in lead 1, we have a little bit moving towards it, we have lots moving away, so we expect to see a deeper S. Lead 2, lead 3, lead 4, lead 5, lead 6. Because lead 6 is starting to look around the back, less cardiac muscle around the back. So there we go, V4, V5 in this example. So let's talk about, so we have our wave height. What happens if we don't have our wave height? I'm already on it, yep. I'm just going to draw this crudely. If this part here is struggling or dead, we would not expect electricity to move through it, meaning we would get a smaller one. But if electricity is moving here, we may expect to see a bigger one. So what if no progression? Like I've kind of coined it as heart failure, but an ongoing, or so it's supposed to be, or post myocardial infarction, heart attack. Are they having one now? Have they had one before? That could be a cause. Poor lead placement, which we've kind of alluded to in the previous one. Dextrocardia, so the heart is actually on the wrong side, or it's not necessarily on the wrong side, it's just on a different side. Attention pneumothorax, we have an increase of lung pressure. That's just it's kind of pushing the heart over. There's a few examples of why we may not get this R wave height, but we've got to see it. We've got to see it. That's what we want in a healthy heart. S waves. The contraction of the Purkinje fibers, these smaller heart fibers. So if I get rid of them. So we have this main strike going down. Oh, this might be a little arrow. But what we also needs to contract other bits around it. So we have these strikes going down and then it's going to go out. So if we were to look at this one, for example, we have obviously the P wave, then we have this big movement towards it, then we have a small movement away, and then it stops, and then obviously we have our T wave in a few moments' time. QRS width. I'm going to come back to a little bit more about Purkinje fibers a little bit later as well when we talk about ST segment elevation and when it goes wrong. QRS width. Now, if I was to draw axis, X and Y axis, and we were talking about ECG, this axis represents size or amplitude. The more electricity moved towards it, the bigger. The less electricity moved towards it, the smaller, the amplitude. But along the bottom, when we print off our ECGs, this represents time. Now, if you were to physically think about it, we want our heart to be powerful and strong, to create the pressure and flow that the body needs for the blood to move around it. So if we have this slow beat, you may not necessarily get the strength, you may not necessarily get the pressure or the power, that kind of, almost that sloppy heart, that we don't want that. We want it to be quick. We want it to be hard. We want it to be powerful. We want this bang, out it goes, pushes the blood out of the valves, and off it goes around the body into the lungs, or through the aorta, around the aortic arch, through the body, blah, blah, blah. No, it's brilliant. That's what we're after. So when it comes to QRS width, we need it to be short, hard beat. That's what we're after. to quickly build up pressure, to open the valves, push the blood through. We want the QRS width to be less than 3 small squares. We want it to be bigger than 1 square. Once again, depending on what literature you read, someone would say it's slightly bigger, but I normally go by 1 square because it makes it easy, just 1 square. When it starts getting to 1.5, I'll get a little bit lost. One's easy. So we've started already alluding to it, a wide QRS, slow or delayed, extra travel distance, loss of excitability, and a little bit random. So what causes a wide QRS? Complete heart block or 3rd degree. PVC, premature ventricular contractions. So if we were to break that term down, premature meaning early, ventricles, it's generated in the ventricles, contraction, it's causing it to contract and beat. Right bundle branch block, left bundle branch block, ventricular tachycardia, plus others can cause a wide QRS, drug overdose and chemical imbalance. Now, the bottom two, I've kind of put in green. We're not going to cover them today because I think an ECG, if someone has had a drug overdose, an ECG is just part of a diagnostic, normally good history taking or paraphernalia, or there's something else that alludes to it. Chemical imbalance, once again, normally there's a history behind it that we can necessarily pick up. So let's have a look at them. Complete heart block. What is happening here? Yep, got that. So we're going back to a simple picture of the heart. Oh, that's right, doesn't make much odds. So what is happening? Well, what is happening is our P wave is firing down here, but we have lost the connection here. We've lost it. So let's say the P wave's firing off here, say 70 beats per minute, and this bit down here, it's not receiving that excitability from above, but it knows it has to fire off. It has its own action potential, it has its own ability to fire off of its own accord. So it does, and it fires off. And that's what gives us our complete heart block. That's all I'm going to talk about it. I actually talked about this in depth about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. Go and find it, CPD me on YouTube, Google it, look through it, you'll see it, pre-hospital ECGs, part 2, blocks in the wolf, and I'll explain that more in detail. Right and left bundle branch block. So we did start talking about this one in the previous one as well. Oh, no, we're not doing that one just yet. So why do we get that width? So let's draw this axis again. Oh, wrong bit. That one. Let's draw this axis, just small in the corner. Amplitude, time. We want it to be narrow. Obviously, if it's wide, it's a problem. But why? So I'm going to draw this quite crudely because I just need it for pictorial. So obviously this is the nerves. And let's say hypothetically, we have a right bundle branch block. There it is. Now, once this element starts firing off, it's going to do its normal bit and it's going to push out to cause the contraction. But this section over here isn't getting anything. Well, it still needs some electricity. So what actually happens is as this receives its electricity, electricity is actually going to start moving from one side to the other. And then once it gets here, we're then going to start having the contractility that we had before. But this takes time. And this is the reason why when we see our right bundle branch blocks or our left bundle branch blocks, why all of a sudden we start getting these wider QRSs. And that's because of the distance it's got to travel from, if I was to do this in reverse and put the red square there, this would contract and it would slowly move its way around. That's all that means. It's taking time. It's just taking time. Now, for this presentation, I was going to go into depth about why we get these shapes that we get. And I kind of thought to myself, well, does that really change what I do pre-hospitally? No, I just need to identify whether I've got a left or right bundle branch block and what I necessarily need to look for. And actually a good friend of mine, Silas, has already presented for CPD-Me on bundle branch blocks and why we get the shape that we get. So if you're really interested of why we have the, the bunny ears, or why we have the, the weird looking left bundle branch block and what affects the rest of the ECG, I really recommend go and watch this one. It's about 45 minutes long. It's really good. And Silas is a great guy as well. With right bundle branch block as well, once again, I've already covered this one. Pre-hospital ECGs, blocks and Wolf. I say CPD-Me on YouTube. It's on there, and I explain more about right bundle branch block. I also look at bifascicular and trifascicular blocks. So what that means is we've got one block in the right bundle, then we've got a second block, and then a third block, and what all that means and what it can mean for the patient. So let's have a look at left bundle branch block. So we can look at this one a little bit more in detail. Now, I've put up a few pictures up here. There's lots of ways of kind of figuring out whether it's left or right bundle branch block. For me personally, I use this very simple tool in the middle. Once again, if you go back to the blocks and the Wolf, I talk about how to identify left bundle branch block. And this was the actual slide that I used in this presentation. So left bundle branch block, what do we need? How do we classify it? So the first thing is we need a wide QRS. If I go back to this, we now understand why we need a wide QRS. Okay, the right bit's all right. So the left bit's struggling, the right bit's okay, and it has to move across. We see a dominant S wave in V1. And there we go. And we see an unusual V6. As we look on this one, V6. And then we have this very simple identifier of which one it is. Does it look mostly like this one? No. Does it look like this one? No. Does it look mostly like this one? Well, out of the three, definitely. And then V6, yep, looks like this one. It's left bundle branch block. Very, very simple. But there is a little bit more for its criteria. We've already talked about left bundle branch block. Needs to be 120 milliseconds, 3 small squares. We've already talked about it. We need to have this dominant S wave in V1. The example down here shows it. We need to have a broad monophasic R wave in the lateral leads. So what monophasic means, it means there's one wave. Like I granted this one has a little knobbly bit at the top, but it in essence has this up and down. And we kind of lost the rest of the QRS, haven't we? We just seem to have this R. And that's it. Absence of Q waves in lateral leads. Once again, if you go and watch Silas's one, he'll explain why. And a prolonged R wave peak time in V5, V6. So once again, it just shows that it's broad again. It's broad again. So we're going to look at a couple of simple examples. So we look at V1. Is it wider than 3 squares? I know this is not the great picture, but it is wider than 3 squares. It's like 4 squares. So we've already got a potential left or right bundle branch block. And then at V6, I have this broad complex monophasic, and that matches my usual suspects. I have found a left bundle branch block. But as I've put at the top here, what else do we notice? We kind of noticed that actually a lot of the other views kind of either mimic the V1 or the V6. Like V1, we have this broad, deep S wave. We seem to have that in lead 3. AVF, it's very broad again, but a very smaller one. And then in AVL, lead 1, like they're very similar views anyway. So we see this kind of very two-style picture. And I wanted to put this one up because sometimes, depending on what we're actually looking at, as you notice, lead 2 looks a little bit better. And actually, sometimes in V6, it can actually look almost better. Like this one's a little bit wiggly, but I wanted this first one. It can actually look okay. And even in V5, so, well, does that look okay? Looks a bit wide, but actually looks okay. And the reason I put this up is that sometimes, especially if it's early, some of these views may just still look okay, but in V1, we've still got this wide QRS, 3 squares, this deep S wave. We've got to question a left bundle branch block. We've got to. Old or new? I get asked this question all the time, and I've said this to lots of people, you know, how to decide it, but let's kind of talk about it. Signs and symptoms. So if we'll just say signs and symptoms of someone having a heart attack, chest pain, diabetic, I've put that in brackets. If they are diabetic, they may not necessarily get chest pain to go with it. Shortness of breath, because the heart can't pump the blood properly, so we have this slow deoxygenation around the body, the breathing tries harder. Lethargic, I think a very underestimated sign. If someone has new lethargy, is very tired all of a sudden after having a period of chest pain, very suspicious, dizzy, hypertension, sweaty, clammy and grey. Very classic symptoms. If they have no symptoms, it's probably old. And the reason why I've said probably, patients don't read textbooks. And sometimes, you know, they may have no symptoms and do the ECG and it could be new right there in front of you. So it's always worth being careful. And I've said this once and I'll keep saying, put someone between you and left bundle branch block. And it's sometimes if it's old, we just need to speak to the GP, or we need to speak to someone who may have a copy of the ECG. The patient may have a copy. And if it looks the same and they have no symptoms, there's a very high possibility it's old. But when it's old, when people have a left bundle branch block, their ECG will always look like a left bundle branch block. So when we go out to them, how do we know if they're having another heart attack? Because their ECG is always going to show left bundle branch block. Well, there's something called the modified Scarbosa Criteria. And once again, when I teach this to lots of other people, keep it simple. And I've had a great conversation with our cardiac lead for the trust that I work for, and even she's in agreement. And when we initially discussed it, and we discussed the finer points, I'm like, but if we only went by the finer points, we could miss them. So let's go by the bigger point, and we should never miss them. And granted, going back to the beginning, sensitivity and specificity, let's make sure we never miss an unwell ECG. So what is the Scarbosa criteria? Well, it's quite straightforward if we follow one simple rule. So for me personally, I look across all V1 to V4 as my safety net, V1 to V4. My cardiology friends, they would say, no, only ever look in one lead. I said, no, I'm overcautious. You're a cardiologist. I'm not. I'm going to look in one, V1 to V4. So it's a ratio greater than 25% or 0.25% ratio. So in this picture to the side, as you can see, we've got our P wave. We've got our very classic wide 3 squares. We've got our deep S wave, and also we've got some elevation. We're going to get onto elevation in a few minutes' time as well. We've got our elevation here. Now our elevation is 3.5 millimeters, or 3.5 squares. Our depression down, or sorry, the strike down is 10.5 millimeters. So that would give us a ratio of 0.33. Is that greater than 0.25? Obviously, it's got minus before it, but you know, for obvious reasons, it's got a minus in the number. But the answer to that is yes. For me, that is a positive modified Scarbosa criteria left bundle branch block. Treat as an acute heart attack. Yes, there is more to it, because actually when we see these ratios, we should be looking at a few other points. Now, as I've said to lots of other colleagues and people far smarter than me, is for me, I'm a paramedic. You know, I do lots of things pre-hospitally, and sometimes I may not see this ECG for a couple of years. And then when it's put in front of me, especially in the heat of a moment, and I've got to quickly decide on what's happening with a patient, if I keep it simple, I know I may get a couple wrong and take them to PPCI, and they may not necessarily need to be there. But it does also mean that every single one that is having a new MI is going to go to PPCI. I'm happy to accept that. And I'm happy to accept that sometimes I may get a cardiologist saying, well, they don't meet the full criteria. It's like, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. It makes me sleep well at night. Because you've got to remember, we are not cardiologists. So ST segment. let's look at some ST segments. So I've drawn this little picture up here. So what we mean is this line going across here. What happens to this line and why? Okay. So ST segment. If it's elevated, we're going to treat it as a heart attack. If we see ST segment depression, there's a high possibility of it being a heart attack. There's a few normal pathologies or normal conditions that can give people ST segment depression. But for me, you know, I'm always very suspicious. I'm going to treat it as a heart attack. If you see elevation in depression, it's a heart attack. It is categorically a heart attack until proven otherwise. For me, that's, you know, I'm going down the heart attack route every day of the week when I see both of them. So what do we mean by ST segment elevation? So as you can see over here, we've got our PA segment, we've got our baseline, and it's trundling across here. And also we have our ST segment, which is this bit just here, this little flat bit just here. And our ST segment elevation, as you can see, this flat bit, which would have been along this dotted line, has now elevated up. And on depression, as you can see, where normally it would be across this dotted line, it has elevated down. Okay, and that's really important, very simple. And the way we figure it out is we need to look for the J point. I'll put this little picture up, and you can see a little J point. So P, Q, R, S, we never really talk about it that much, but the secret J, there it is, the silent J. We're looking for that J point. But why does it get elevated, or why does it get depressed? Oh, good, I can use this picture. Let's get rid of all this. Right, that'll do. Let's put that green bit back in. So why do we get it? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pretend this blue bit is my heart attack, and it's only affecting at the moment this section just here. Yep, one green. So electrode is here. So electricity from here is moving down here, and it can't travel through tissue which doesn't have any blood and oxygen. It can't travel through it, but it still wants to kind of push forward. So what actually happens is we kind of get this kind of looping round. It still wants to go somewhere. It still wants to do something. So going back to the principles, if electricity is moving towards electrode and it's positive, it's going to go up. If it's moving away, it's going to go down. So that would be an up. So what do we see? So we have our P wave, we have our up, then we may have a little bit of a rebound, and then it's kind of stays up for a bit. In fact, so I'm going to draw it down like that. And it stays up for a bit before going down. And then we have our J point. Now, when we think about ECG dots, I'm going to draw one over here. Because we've still got electricity moving here, and let's just say from here we've got some electricity moving here. Well, this bit over here is going to see. If I did just this section here, it's only going to see that. If I was going to draw this bit just here. But when this has stopped moving, it can still see this electricity over here moving. It can still see this segment just here. So now we've got electricity moving away from it. Now, under the principles that we've already talked about, in fact, I have to keep it in red. So it thinks it's returning, but actually it can still see, oops, do it in red. It can still see some electricity. So I've drawn it slightly out, but we've got this depression, and we've got our J point. We've got our J point here. And that's purely because electricity is still moving. Now, is there more to it than this? Yeah, there is a little bit more to it, but I think this is a nice, simple, easy pictorial for us to understand why we get this elevation in front of the lead and why we get this depression on the other side. So what this is referred to as reciprocal changes. And that's what I mean. Sometimes when we see depression, but we don't see elevation, well, it could be a heart attack, could be a couple of other reasons. When we see elevation, there's a very high possibility it's a heart attack. When we see both, well, categorically, it's going to be treated as a heart attack by me until proven otherwise. So as part of Chamberlain's 10 rules, it needs to be in 2 views or more. And I've just stolen this one off the internet. But we need to be quite honest with ourselves. As much as when we say 2 views, if I have elevation in V2 and V3, that is significant. So just to clarify, 2 views, so pick this one because of colours. So if it's 2 elevations or depressions in yellow, that's significant. 2 elevations and depressions in green, blue, orange, and AVR. We're not going to cover too much about AVR. You know, you can read a lot into it. Also, a lot of people advise not to read into anything at all. But if you were to have elevation in V2 and V3, well, if we physically think where the ECG dots are being placed, let's try and get rid of some of these bits so I can just draw. Lead 1, lead 2, lead 3, lead 4, lead 5, lead 6, or something of that nature. Well, these 2 are next to each other. So if I have elevation and depression, oh, why is it not going over there? Oh, if I have elevation and depression in V2, V3, that's significant. Likewise, if I have it in V4, V5, it's significant. The leads are physically next to each other, but it has to be more than 2 views or more, however you want to coin it. It's entirely up to you. So let's have a little look. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. So we are looking for elevation and depression on this one. Now, by means of systematic approach of reading ECGs, if you come along to the tips and tricks, you'll never miss a poor ECG. I'll explain the systematic approach that I use. And as I say, I've never missed as far as I'm aware, I've never missed an unhealthy ECG. But if I look in over here in lead 2, lead 3, AVF, I can see the J point has been elevated. Okay, I can see that J point has been elevated. Now, if I look on the other side, V1, V2, V3, V4 are depressed. Now, what did we say only 2, 3, 4 slides before? Is if we see elevation and depression on the same 12 lead, they're having a heart attack until someone a lot smarter than me says they're not. But I would bet a month's salary this person's having a heart attack. And actually, I can even tell you what view it is. It's the inferior. And later on, if you come along to the 6th one, we'll even talk about what blood vessels they're blocking off. They're having a myocardial infarction. They're having a heart attack. So I wanted to put this one up because this one's a little bit different, because we can see in V1, V2, they have this elevation. We can see this J point quite obviously, and there goes elevation. But why can't we see the depression? Well, that's quite simple. So I'm just going to be very crude and draw a little picture of a stigma. And then draw a little picture of his heart. Now, if the heart attack is here, right at the front, so these 1, 2, 3, 4, which is what this one's showing us. So if we were looking straight on, where have we put those ECG dots? We have put them directly on their chest. And the reciprocal changes, the depression could be round his back, could be near his spine. We may need to put some ECG dots around his spine to find them. But in essence, we found ST segment elevation. This person is suitable for cardiac intervention. They're suitable for stenting. So just always consider, if we especially have them across the chest leads, especially V2, V3, V4, that it can be around the back. We've got this one up. We've kind of already started looking at this one. V1, our J point is up here. Oh, actually, we've got something else going on here as well. We've got our wide QRS. Oh, we've also got our monophasic V6. We've got a left bundle branch block, and we've got some elevation. Well, is this old? Is this new? Well, now we need to look at some symptoms, don't we? Do they have symptoms? Yes, this is probably new. High percentage is going to be new. They don't have symptoms. I'm very suspicious. I'm going to put someone between me and this ECG, because I don't know this gentleman unless there's an old ECG knocking around. and try and figure out if this is old or new. It doesn't meet the modified Scarbosa criteria. The up looks only about 4 or 5 squares. The down looks, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 25 squares. It's only 4. It doesn't meet the ratio. This doesn't meet the modified Scarbosa. But I'd like to put someone between me and the left-bunded branch block. Now, I've put this one up. I'm sure there are some of you out there who are screaming at the monitor or screaming at your TV, your laptop, whatever, going, I know what this is, but let's think about it. We've got depression in V1. V2 looks okay. We've definitely got some elevation in V3, V4, V5, V6. In lead 1, AVL looks okay. Lead 2, lead 3, AVF. We have global ST segment elevation. Now, you're probably all sat there going, well, hang on a minute, Ben, that can't quite be right, because you've just said that if we have elevation on one side of the heart, then we should have depression on the other side of the heart. So what is causing this? So let's just quickly recap. So if we had elevation over here, we should see depression over here, because that's the opposite side. But here we're seeing global ST segment elevation. Well, let's have a little think. We know just by the principles that if we see something with this kind of shape, there seems to be kind of slowness of electricity moving. So it's almost like each bit of electricity is kind of getting to the outer edge and like wiggling round. Something of that nature. So, which is not right, which is categorically not right. So it's almost like something is happening to irritate the outside of the heart. Now, what would happen if I said to you, this person had a temp 40 degrees. He had a low-grade infection for a couple of days, had a temperature of 40 degrees. You've turned up because he's complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath. What would everyone think? Well, myocarditis, pericarditis, some kind of inflammation of the heart? Yeah, but this has elevation in views. For me, this is still a heart attack till proven otherwise. This is pericarditis. There's a few other points to know that it's pericarditis. I'm not going to go into them today, because I think if you see this, it has ST segment elevation. You are to put yourself between yourself and the ECG. You need someone else to know what it is. So how much change? Now, we've talked about the J point. We've talked about a few other bits and bobs, but we haven't really talked about how much the J point means. So let's kind of quick recap what we mean by a J point. So the J point is this bit here. So we want to know, the question is, how much up do we need? Or more importantly, also how much down do we need if it's depressed? So nationally, they would say for chest leads, that's your V1 to V6, 2 small squares. For women, it's 1.5 squares. For limb leads, it's 1 small square. So that's going to be your lead 1, lead 2, AVF, blah, blah, and all those ones on that side. However, check your local policy and criteria, because my local trust, or the trust that I work for, I should say, it is categorically 1 small square across the whole ECG. And that's really important for you to know, because your PPCI units may also have the same criteria of 1 small square. If you work somewhere really unusual, they may say, no, we're quite happy until it's 2.5 squares. And that could be due to travel times. It could be down to where the PPCI is, could be down to the teams they have. So check your local policy to make sure that's what it is. Whew, I've done a lot of talking. Thank you very much. So I just want to give a quick special thanks to Liam Cottrell, who helped me put this together. He's a cardiology ACP. Silas Buds, who's presented one of them before, who's done a bit of work for me on this one as well, who's a pre-hospital critical care specialist, and he's a good mate of mine as well. Both of them are good mates of mine. And yeah, we're kind of there. Questions. Let's open up the forum. Let's have some questions.
Wow.
I know I was
Wow.
worried I wasn't going to get it in an hour, but actually I've done it in 50 minutes. I'm well chuffed.
Right, let's get some Q&A. Have we got any Q&A? I don't think I've seen that many come in, let's be honest. We've got 2 Q&A just come in. We have had lots and lots of really good feedback, which I've got them here. I'm just about to put them into my magical raffle box. So thank you to all the people who's left us some reviews. How you've took all that in and left us a review on Trustpilot and Google is beyond me at the same time, because multitasking on another level is just beyond. And so equally, we've also had Victoria, Kieran, Catriona, Shauna and Jeremy, who's just joined us during that webinar. Equally, how you've done that at the same time. Multitasking, I have to say, is amazing. And so... fabulous.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Susan. She's loving the sessions. Good.
There's some fabulous comments out there on the chat. And so let me, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me quickly whiz down. I'm going to give people a minute or so to quickly put their Qs and As in there, because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. And in fact, I'm absolutely convinced there will be.
So I can already spot one. Pericarditis. So pericarditis is an inflammation around the heart. And it just means it interferes with electrical pathways just because it's basically around the heart, and it just changes the ECG. By means of treatment, my uncle had pericarditis and he still went to cardiac. He still had an angiogram, which is where they put the dye in the heart, see if there's any occlusions. And the ECG categorically showed pericarditis. I saw the ECG, but they still went down this, we need to rule out he's having a heart attack.
Yeah, it's accepted to come on that. I think that's happened to me as well, Ben.
Yeah,
absolutely the same.
Yeah, and it's for me. Is it also right that left bundle can mask ST segment elevation? You would see them both at the same time. So if they have a new left bundle branch block, you'll see ST segment elevation. If it's old and they don't have symptoms, they may still have ST segment elevation on their ECG. So it doesn't necessarily mark it. That's why the modified Scarbosa criteria comes in, because it shows that if there's more elevation, there's a very high suspicion that it's new. That's what it means. I hope that answers your question, Malcolm.
You're too quick at this, Ben. You're too efficient.
So Ruth, yeah, you just crack on. So Ruth, I don't know about you, but I found all of them on YouTube. You can get them by, I think, signing up for CPD Me and going onto their website and looking on there. By the way, they are on YouTube as well. Yeah, so they are around. Speak to the team and they'll get you all the details.
So if you
Louise, thank you.
Download the app. They're on the app. There you go. Download the app, search in the webinars, and they're in there. Just search for Ben. Search for Mr. Ben. I don't know if anybody's old enough on here to remember Mr. Ben. Do you remember Mr. Ben, Ben? Do you remember Mr. Ben?
Yeah, but he's going to a little changing room. Yeah.
Yeah, and changing to different characters. I used to love it. Right. I'll tell you what, let's go through these screens first. So download the app, please do. You find it on the App Store. It's under CPD Me. You'll love it. Oh, you've just frozen, Ben. Oh, I think you've frozen. Has Ben frozen? Are you still there, Ben? I think you've frozen.
So someone asked a question from the last session. Oh, am I back?
Yeah.
I'm still here. I think I'm frozen. Can you hear me? Oh, here you go. My mouse is working.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think something else is happening on that. Someone asked a question about the last presentation. No, I didn't find out, but give me 2 secs. What I'm going to do. So Liam, where is the question? I'll put that in, not the next one, the 4th one. I'll put that in the other bits. Hypothermia is for another day. David, if you want hypothermia, I will add that onto the last one. That's fine. Hypothermia is relatively simple, and it's just one extra bit that we can then determine that's why an ECG change is what it is. Had a couple of cases recently of Takabusa Syndrome. What ECG changes would you see, please? So let's wait on the Takabusa Syndrome, because I'm going to do that one at a later date as well, and I don't want to spoil the surprise.
There you go.
Because I'm pretty sure it's on my list, but I'm going to make sure.
I'll get the chat over to you, Ben, tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah. Can you add hyperkalemia in the last one? So what I will do, I won't coin it as hyperkalemia. I'm going to coin it as chemical imbalance. And the reason being is the points behind, there are lots of things to be really definitive whether it's hyperkalemia, and that can be the type of, the size of the T wave, also it can be the width of the entire QRS as well. So I think it's easier if we just look at the grosser points of it, and then from there it's just an idea of like, oh, I found there's a chemical imbalance in their heart, because it doesn't change anything for us, but it's I found it. And that's the important bit. Is that okay, whoever asked the question? Natasha Pink, is that okay? I'll do that one. Lovely, thank you. Yep, cool, no problem.
Davina has just asked a question there in relation to dextrocardia and ECG findings.
So we actually have a guy with dextrocardia locally, and well, I say locally, we're in an area I used to work in, and we used to go out to him quite a lot. We haven't seen him for a few years, so I don't know what's happened to him. And I would always say, do a normal, as we would do a normal ECG on him. And I wouldn't anticipate anyone reading into it. And for me, it's the idea if there's any changes. But was that the question? If patient's condition of the heart is on the opposite side of the chest with ECG, yeah, it looks completely different. Because if you think about if electricity is moving, so normally electricity is moving kind of this way out because my heart's sat here. If my heart's here, it's moving this way out. So the ECG dot on 6 could look absolutely abnormal, and in fact these ones here may not see anything at all because it's not sat over the heart. But I would always do a normal, what we would consider a normal style ECG on them. What's that? Had a patient last night with anteroseptal STEMI with no reciprocal changes. We'll definitely do a posterior on ECG next time. Yeah, and you know, I haven't really talked too much about posteriors on this one. I'm not going to throughout any of it because we found our elevation. And on section 6, which we're going to do, which is the extended session, we are going to talk about treatment management plans of ST segment, STEMIs, ST segment elevation, myocardial infarction, or in layman's terms, elevated heart attacks. We're going to talk all about that. And if you want, I'll stick it in. I'll make a note of that one. I'll stick in posterior.
It's going to be a busy. It's going to be a busy session.
I have the time. Well, I think we're aiming for about 4 hours, aren't we, for the last session, 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah,
that's what I thought we were talking about, weren't we?
Yeah, the symposium.
And and for anyone who's still listening, if you're still prepared to listen to me,
170 people. Yeah.
The 4 to 5 hours, 170 people. The 4 or 5 hours one is how to. If any of you know me, you know when I'm talking about whether it be respiratory, cardiac, abdominal, trauma, systematic approach. I start at this point and I do not pass that point until I'm happy I've got my answer. Then I move to the next point, and then I move to the next point. And it's very simple. The way I approach ECGs is a systematic approach. All of these sessions are building into that systematic approach. The symposium, 4 or 5 hours, I guarantee you will never miss an unwell ECG if you watch that session. I guarantee it, to the point that I have sat there with cardiologists stress testing it. Don't get me wrong, you're going to take some people who are perfectly fine to hospital. I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't want us to miss one. That's the bit. I don't want us to miss one. Sorry, I've been waffling on. Kirsty McDonald, that name rings a bell. Have we ever met Kirsty? Don't think so. Very interesting. Thank you, Louise. I would take them. Yeah, in the sense there's something we should consider about a system of approach, but I'm not too sure. So Louise. So as I say, any of my teaching for pre-hospital care and treatment, if we do a systematic approach, we'll never miss anything. Come watch the session. I know it's going to be long, but I've already in my mind kind of decided how I'm going to work. It's going to be 45-minute slots. But the last kind of 2 hours, the last bit is going to be the systematic approach bit. And that's the really bit. So if you want to have a Saturday morning in, a bit hungover, have your breakfast, log on at 9:30, 10, whatever it is, watch the last 2 hours, you'll get the systematic approach. But you would have to watch the 1 to 5 first. Definitely watch the 1 to 5 first, because otherwise you'll miss a few key points.
I'll tell you what we'll do, Ben. On the next presentation, we'll put the links to the 1 to 5 for people who haven't missed them. So we'll get all the links on there. We'll do that.
Okay, fine.
Let me pick one of these Amazon winners.
Yeah, sorry, I'm waffling.
It's all right. No, I like it. You should be the facilitator and presenter. You could probably do it all in one, Ben.
Mark, I'll see you soon, mate. I went to school with Mark. Nice one, mate. Take it easy. So, Kirsty, there's not a date yet because Liam Cottrell, who's the colleague who helped me write this, may be coming in and doing some bits with me. So I'm just waiting to find out. He's just had a small child. So we're just kind of waiting to find out when's going to be good for him, really. Oh, drum roll.
Winner number 1 of the £25 voucher is Sol Sutty. Trustpilot. Thank you so much, Sol. Drop me an email, andrew@cpdme.com, and I'll ping you your voucher. Winner number 2, and thank you to all the people who's left us Trustpilot, Google reviews tonight. I appreciate it, and I will do one more tomorrow, as promised. I'll leave all them in there till tomorrow on my desk. Winner number 2 is, drum roll, Ben, are you ready? Kai B. That's a good name. That's a good name. Kai B, Trustpilot. Fabulous. Kai, drop me an email, andrew@cpdme.com.
Another question's popped up. Another question: do left bundle branch patients presented with chest pain need to go to PPCI? So my kind of stance is left bundle branch block. You should always be speaking to a colleague, speaking to someone about it. If they have any cardiac symptoms or you are suspicious of cardiac symptoms, they are very high contender for primary angiograms and stenting. If they have the classic chest pain and shortness of breath, in my world, if that PPCI is not accepting them, something is going wrong. They are a PPCI patient every day of the week. And my colleagues who work in cardiology would agree. Why do some of them get refused? Sometimes they don't have a team in if it's after 5:30 or after 7 in the evening. Sometimes it takes them an hour or 2 to get a team in. So say go to local to bring them into that hospital into resus, and then they go up a couple of hours later. And that's purely because of the teams. So Natasha, yes, chest pain, left bundle, PPCI, in my world, every day of the week. Any more? Oh, pictures have disappeared. I can't help you with that, Laura Marley. Ben keeps. Thank you, David. Fantastic presentation. Can you add yet on that one? See you around. Good. Love you. Thanks so much. It's great to help. Looking forward. Good. Thanks, Gavin. I really enjoyed. Thank you, Lisa. Sounds pretty positive. I'm glad everyone enjoys it. I just have I think for me, keep the language simple. You guys are all kind of pre-hospital staff anyway. I'm massively dyslexic. I struggle with long technical words, so let's keep it simple. Thanks, Ben and Andy. Yep, no problem, mate. Thanks, G. Cool. So last chance, any other questions or any other things people want me to add into section 5? As I say, Takabusa Syndrome, we're going to look at, I think, on the next one, if not one after, chemical imbalance, and posterior, I'm going to throw in on the big session.
If you want anything from Ben to cover after tonight's webinar when we stop going live in a second, just let us know on Twitter, let us know on Instagram, let us know by email, send us a message via the app, whichever, and we'll make sure we get that back to Ben, so at least we'll try and cover as much as we can in the next sessions. And as Ben's already alluded, we will have a Saturday morning symposium. I'm not sure about turning up rough, to be honest. I think you'll need to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I think the term is.
Yeah. So, and to like the bit on the Saturday, I've done it a few times for lots of people. It's great fun. And I've got some bits to send out for people. Yeah, you'll love it. You'll love it.
Fabulous.
Oh, hang on.
Ben,
They've got some more questions. Is an elevator indicating a STEMI? So Lord Harley, yes, it is. So there's a little Q&A box at the bottom of the chat. Just like that. Will there be able to watch? Yes. Is the Scarbosa criteria to help diagnose an MA? So Scarbosa criteria. If you have a left bundle branch block heart attack, a majority of heart attack or your majority of ECGs after that will show a left bundle branch block presentation. So when you go back out to them and they've got new chest pain, how do we know if it's new or old? Well, it's by increased elevation in relation to a ratio of it going down. So it's just that, is it old, is it new? That's all it means. Would these patients need to go to PPCI? Yes. Do left bundle branch chest pain go up? Yes. Hello, what is the systemic tip of reading ECGs quickly and efficiently? So Mary, if I told you that now, I'd do myself out of the next 3 presentations. So Mary, it's actually very simple, but you need to have the underpinning knowledge to understand the systematic approach. I could give it to you right now in a handout and you'd walk away going, I don't know what this means. And then it becomes irrelevant. BJ's gone, what about the J point question, Ben? Sorry, yeah, there's 2 points of adding questions, so I've just gone into questions. So Lord Harley, take care. I asked the J point question, which has been missed. He got it. Yeah, that was that one, wasn't it? Was that one? Yeah. So if the J point is above by 2 squares, or depending on your local criteria, or below by 2 squares, then you have to treat it as a heart attack until proven otherwise. Does that answer your question? Oh, he's gone. Yeah, he got it. Night. Perfect. Come on, there's 123 people still listening to me waffle. There's some questions.
That's impressive. That's impressive. Well, listen, if you have any more questions, please do fire them to us on social media, and I promise I will get them to Ben. I think he's managed to cram so much into an hour and 12 minutes tonight, and so I much appreciate your time. So if you are out there still working, please do stay safe for the rest of the evening. If you're at home, then as I would say, kick off your slippers, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for joining us here at CPDME. Ben, thank you so much. Is engaged in his...
No problem. Yeah, got to go. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Kirsty. Glad you employed it. We love you waffling. Sharon, if you knew me, everyone on my station hates me because I waffle it. No one asks me questions anymore because I just waffle. Great stuff. Thanks. Yeah, cool. Guys, I'm here. Any questions, feel free to ask.
Ben, thank you so much for this evening. And I'm going to let everybody go now because it's 9:15. But listen, I'll stay safe. I'll be in touch, Ben. We'll chat about what we chatted about earlier before we went live. It's not a secret. Ben's already alluded to the symposium. But watch this space. It'll be coming soon. Thank you to all the members out there. Thank you to the new members who joined tonight. And thank you to the people who've left us Trustpilot reviews. And the ones who do so tonight, I'll go live tomorrow on Twitter and reveal the next £25 voucher. Stay safe, everybody. Ben, boom. Take it easy.
Nice. Good night. Speak to you later.
Take care. Night-night.